And in this episode, we'll cover the latest technology advances within aerospace and defense C domain. So that's from new autonomous platforms to communication updates. This will be an exciting episode featuring some of the most dynamic solutions for the sea. But first, let's dive into the major newsmakers in the aerospace and defense industry for the month of June.
Let's kick off with the major events in the aerospace and defense industry for June 2024. Here are some of the top stories. SpaceX NASA's contract. SpaceX secured an $843 million contract to deorbit the ISS in 2030. As the ISS nears the ends of its operational life and plans for new commercially owned space station heat up, safely disposing of the International Space Station at the end of the decade is going to be crucial. Lockheed Martin's F-35 delivery. Lockheed Martin announced the delivery of its 1,000th F-35 Lightning II aircraft, marking a significant milestone in the program. This delivery underscores the ongoing demand and operational importance of the F-35 in maintaining air superiority for the U.S. and its allies. Northrop Grumman's B-21 Raider progress. Northrop Grumman reported successful testing of the B-21 Raider stealth capability. This next-generation bomber is expected to play a crucial role in the U.S. Air Force's strategic long-range strike capabilities. Raytheon's Advanced Missile System, SM-6. The Raytheon Technologies announced a breakthrough in its Advanced Missile Defense System with successful interception tests, demonstrating enhanced capabilities to protect against emerging threats. It is the only missile system that supports anti-air warfare, anti-surface warfare, and the sea-based terminal ballistic missile defense in one solution, enabling the United States and its allies to have a cost-effective solution for surface forces. Rob, what do you think about what jumps at you, my friend, of these top four for what happened in the month of June?
I think, first starting off with space, I think space has always been something I've been most curious about. So seeing the ISS, that contract being issued to SpaceX to deorbit that space station, it's been amazing to see the progression of that space station. I can't believe that it's been in orbit that long where, it's at the end of its life, so it has to be deorbited. And I'm curious to see how that contract develops and, the key developments in that area, because it'll be crucial to track that.
Yeah, I think it's also important. It's probably a paradigm shift in how the commercial industry can start taking front and center when we're dealing with these big man-based space missions, right? This is an opportunity now where all these other commercially owned space stations and things like that to go complete that mission, because that mission for the International Space Station is still definitely going to be needed. It's just time for the industry, and I guess it's for the industry to take really a more front and center on the effort.
Yeah, and I love everything that's going on with the autonomous realm in space, because as you're thinking about habitable life outside of Earth and using these space stations for different mission sets, it is going to be critical for DC exploration in that respect. So the other thing that caught my eye was the F-35, and that program by itself just being a staple in the air industry for so long on the defense side, and it's been amazing to see the progression of it, and this being kind of the pivot point and something the other programs really go after, as far as this is the pinnacle, and this is what a lot of programs mark their progression or mark their development efforts off of.
Yeah, and that's amazing. You say that as somebody who spent a significant amount of DNA working and working F-35 when I was hard running our pumps and gearbox business in Rockford, Illinois. The F-35 and it's moving from low rate to full rate production was like hot and heavy, man. And it was everything that happened. It was Murphy's Law. But, it just really just shows the strength and the dedication of the entire defense industry. I think this F-35 has, over what was like 200 so suppliers at one time. Yep. Work was done in, I think, at least 20 states that had a play into this thing. And so this is like the bell cow defense program. I mean, you like it or don't like it, but it performs out in the field. And so, And it definitely does its part with all three versions that it has. And it definitely changed the game, if you will, for how we do defense.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's what really jumped out to me, Dwayne. I'm not sure if anything else jumped out to you in the industry that's
No,
going
I,
on these days.
no, I think that's it, man. Let's jump into the tech topic of the day.
So, Dwayne, now let's shift gears to discuss some of the autonomous capabilities from a marine and deep sea perspective. So, my tech insights today will be around autonomous capabilities. What are some of the sea platforms? What are some of the major autonomous platforms? And then communication advancements. So, really looking at, what is JASC2? How does that make a difference in the sea platform, the sea domain? But, let me back up and say a little bit. So autonomous technologies continue to be the fastest growing products in the industry. So some of these key capabilities that they're now tackling are from a commercial and research applications. They're seafloor mapping, ocean surveys or subsea building sites, monitoring the ocean reef life organisms and fish specimens in that environment, and then the ocean crash investigations. So that's just from a commercial standpoint. But on the military applications, they are intelligence survey and reconnaissance, so ISR, mine countermeasures, MCM, decoy, payload delivery, time critical strikes, anti submarine warfare, and then lastly, communications, navigation, network nodes. So even take a further step back. So let me provide you an overview of the executive level autonomous sea platforms and why they're important to future society. So autonomous underwater vehicle, AUV, is an unmanned underwater robot that is capable of independently completing a pre-programmed mission. So these autonomous platforms provide access to areas that may otherwise be not explored or act as fast multipliers, allowing one ship to research a greater surface underwater area that might not would have been possible before. And it's really well known that currently only 5% of the ocean has been explored by man. And why is that other 95% of the ocean been going explored? It's because it is difficult to see in deep water, and that so-called sunlight zone ends about 200 meters below the ocean surface, so making it much trickier to image and capture images in that pressure and that level of underneath water. And then also at great ocean depths, the exploration conditions become extremely uninhabitable or extremely extreme for humans. So currently there are several ongoing technology development programs in the major defense contractors, and those companies are looking to disrupt the market. And here are a few to name.
Yeah, before you jump into that, Rob, when you think about, the autonomous technologies purely from a marine perspective, right? Of course, it's all about exploration. And you hit on those and, how the ocean moves and measuring current to look at organisms we have, how life exists below sea level, things like that. But there's so many much more from a military basis where that helps too. You talked about ISR. That's a big part of what we know the Navy is really looking for to help to somewhere we can passively see what's happening and passively deal with these kill chains that's going on in various areas around the world where there's potential there, that along with mining and things like that. But also it helps with the detection piece too, right? When you think about from the Coast Guard perspective of dealing with undersea, from the drug trade thing that goes on, as well as you look at from those autonomous underwater vehicles. You also can look at things like that happens with like in the Barrier Straits and things like that when you got these pirating activities that goes on that's happening in a lot of industry, particularly in the shipping industry. They use those technologies to help them get the products and things safely out of that and shipping above to make the shipment routes more safer as well.
Totally right. I mean, it's interesting to see the vast capabilities that are going to be tackled by these vehicles. And in the future, those capabilities, when you team it with AI and machine learning and all these other, major developments that are going on from that perspective I think it's really endless what they could potentially do for humanity as they move forward. But let me, jump back into those four key development efforts that are going on with companies these days. So I'll hit on three major companies, but also pick on a darker project that I found that was interesting. So, the first company I'll look at as far as their product is with Anduril. And so it's going to be their Dive LD program. And that's going to be a flexible and unique architecture capable of rapid integration of complex payloads or multi-sensor suite. And it's really ideal for a variety of missions, such as the undersea battlespace intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, that mine counter warfare, the anti-submarine warfare, and the seafloor mapping, and so much more from that program. So it is exciting to see what Anduril is doing in that space. Also, Northrop Grumman just released their manta ray program. So that's a new uncrewed underwater vehicle that will operate at a longer duration, long range missions in that deep sea ocean environments without the need for on-site human logistics support. So it's going to have that payload capable to support various missions, that energy saving, being able to anchor on the seafloor and hibernate at a low power state, but also is really modular. So it's going to be easy for shipment in containers to be deployed across the world. So it is really great to see something like that. And it also is a really cool vehicle. So the manta ray was specifically, it looks like a manta ray, if you know that animal. So, and then lastly, hit on Boeing. So Boeing has the Echo Voyager. So the Echo Voyager is a fully autonomous, extra large, unmanned undersea vehicle, XLUUV class, that can be used for a variety of missions that were previously impossible due to the unmanned underwater vehicle limitations. So that Echo Voyager is complete with the extensive internal and external payload volume and available energy capacity, really expanding the parameters of what is possible for those unmanned undersea systems. And then lastly, DARPA, this DARPA project. So DARPA is, for those that don't know the acronym, is Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And the Hunter program is really what comes to mind when I look at the DARPA project that, is a key supporter of like autonomous sea platforms. So the Hunter program seeks to develop an innovative concept, the delivery of advanced undersea payloads from an extra large unmanned underwater vehicle. So the XLUUVs I mentioned before. And the Hunter program will be executed in phases. So that phase one is seeks to design and build the payload delivery device to fit inside a government-provided payload module. And then phase two and phase three aim to support the integration of those payloads in the delivery of the device into the XLUUV and performing the testing. And then to cover some of the major systems that support these amazing platforms, I did mention JADC2 earlier. And that's going to be critical aspect of what is going to be communication. So JADC2, that's the acronym. So that means Joint All Domain Command and Control. And that's what we know as the industry. So JADC2 provides a coherent approach encompassing air, land, sea, space, and cyber domains for shaping the future Joint Force C2 capabilities, and is intended to produce the warfighting capability to sense, make sense, and act at all levels and phases of war across all domains, and with partners to deliver that information advantage at the speed of relevance. So as an approach, JADC2 transcends any single capability, platform, or system. To further explain that sense, make sense, and act, so sense really means for JADC2 is integrating information across all domains and the electromagnetic spectrum. Make sense is really understanding what that operational environment is. So it's analyzing the information to better understand and predict the operational environment and the actions and intentions of an adversary, as well as the actions of our own and friendly forces. And lastly, act is deciding and disseminating decisions to the joint force and its mission partners. So JADC2 will really enable the joint force to use increasing volumes of data, employ automation and AI, and rely upon that secure and resilient infrastructure and act as an inside and adversary's decision cycle. I really see JADC2 as being the next wave of communications and how everything is going to be all joint forces, joint commands, going forward.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, but the JADC2 is going to be that tie that bind. I think when we get into the next business synopsis of all this, what does it really mean to industry? We'll dive in deep into that more, but really good background on those things, Rob, particularly of those particular really cool uncrewed programs, and then giving something from a functional perspective of something that's going to go in with JADC2 that goes across that entire domain. And so that's pretty cool.
All right, so Dwayne, can you give the folks a business synopsis of how all these new technologies advance the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. So I'm going to break down the federal defense budget implications for each of these technologies that you talked about. and then some of the current plans that some of the defense contractors are using to go create these solutions with the defense budget. So the defense budget of the development is mainly around the Navy, right? So it's going to be focused around the Navy and their autonomous capabilities and other marine-based missions. And this is what's in FY24. And it includes significant allocations aimed at enhancing the maritime dominance and integrating advanced technologies. I think key terms for those geeks out there who look at anything that says budget is about maritime, that means the Navy. The overall budget for the Navy is FY24 is like $255 billion, which is $11 billion increase from last year. And it supports all the national defense strategy, which includes integrated deterrence, campaigning, and building enduring advantages. The RDT&E budget, or the research, development, test, and evaluation portion of that budget, relies heavily on that, and they've increased nearly $1 billion that's been allocated to do modernization for the warfighting capabilities across those domains that the Navy has, particularly with investments in unmanned and autonomous marine solutions. So you really check that out. So when we talk about like 3 things in the budget that's called out, number one, autonomous capabilities. So significant funding has been allocated towards that for both commercial and military. That's what a few of them, but they're really about deep sea AUVs, right? Autonomous vehicles and how they play in surveillance and in overall naval operations, right? So some of the defense contractors we talked about, Anduril, Northrop Grumman, which is working on underwater drones and autonomous surface vessels as part of the maritime solution. But if you think about it from a defense industry standpoint, if you think about Northrop Grumman, that's one of their bell cow domains, as we say. They provide a lot of the maritime operations and sea and things like that. They even had to spin off with IHI, became, as far as from a shipbuilding perspective, but Northrop Grumman, this is in Northrop Grumman's wheelhouse pretty much. And then you get into, from a communication standpoint, the budget around JADC2, which we clearly talked about earlier and in a previous podcast. All the defense players have a play, and the Navy, they have what they call DMO, which is their maritime operations, which is their version of JADC2 from a sea perspective. And you have contractors that's playing, all the contractors are playing, like I said, but Lockheed Martin's looking at the integration of the communication systems across the platforms, looking at the data. Raytheon themselves are really talking about looking at the advanced sensors and securing those networks around it, as well as Grumman are also working around EW and securing the communications as well for those requirements. And then the last topic I want to get across that's really showing you where this action is going to happen, right? It's all about what's going on in Indo-PACOM, right, in those missions. And the Indo-PACOM area of operation receives significant focus in the defense budget, particularly for enhancing maritime security and surveillance, right? We got Anduril out there. They have a lot of their autonomous maritime surveillance systems that looks at out from a vast ocean area and give that intelligence back to and enhancing back to all the mission systems that's there. Grumman, again, with their UUVs and autonomous surface vessels that compare. Boeing has the Echo Voyager, where we talked about there, and then Doppler has the Sea Hunter program, which provides the autonomous anti-submarine capabilities and enhances of Indo-PACOM as well. And from a Raytheon perspective, we only have the effectors that they're using, but they're also looking at, from an ISR perspective, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance type view, try to look at the mission from a passive critical chain perspective. What does that mean? That means that if I'm looking at something, I don't send a signal out so you can actively see that I'm looking at you. So if I'm passively using like EO and IR, electro-optic and infrared technology to really see what's going on, right? So these are the implications of the technologies in the budgets, and they are very profound, right? And by investing in these autonomous capabilities and advanced communication systems, the DoD aims to maintain technical superiority and enhance operational effectiveness. The contractors are responding by aligning their R&D efforts and their development efforts with these priorities to ensure that we continue to deliver the cutting-edge solutions that our military needs.
Now, I really appreciate that insight, Dwayne. I think it's also the folks really get a good sense of explaining how the budget relates to program funding and really get a basic understanding of how all that transcends. So it's like, the various forces get budget and how that translates to various budgets within various segments. So it seems like it's a lot of the budget is going towards the warfighting capability. So it is great to see that. Any other insights you have there, Dwayne? I think it's been a lot of the push. It seems like the government is on those new capabilities for war, and then making sure that the autonomous capabilities are growing in the space because they want to prevent further human loss of lives during this.
Absolutely. It's about, you don't want to use those technology to have it, but if we need them, they're there, right? But you also want to understand that you want to, particularly the sailor that's out there fighting that fight, defending that mission. You don't want to overworkload, and anything we can do to assist that sailor, those Marines, those admirals, those folks that are on those big, huge aircraft carriers and ships and delivering those missions and on those forward-looking activities that would make sure that their systems work, and we give them the best technology we can to get them home safe. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, really appreciate that, Dwayne.
As we wrap up this episode, we want to thank our audience for tuning in to Brothers in Aerospace and Defense. Today, we covered everything across aerospace and defense sea domain, from some of the most exciting sea platforms to the cutting-edge systems that support them.
So some of the key takeaways that I have is really just one. So from an autonomous sea platform capabilities, they're going to stretch across from a commercial standpoint as well as a military standpoint. So that's something for the listeners to really key in as technology advances going forward, because it has both commercial applications that are great for researchers and those mapping out the sea forward and do that deep sea exploration, but also from the government and military standpoint, it has vast capabilities and applications there. So I'm excited to see where the future goes with these autonomous sea platforms and how they advance. What about you, Dwayne?
Yeah, again, it's all about the how those capabilities show up within the budget, right? And it's understanding those implications of those capabilities in the budget, and then where industry can go use that to drive industry to go make the change, right? To go create these new systems like I talked about earlier. And then you really appreciate the importance, because the budget tell us where we're going, right? The direction in the budget. We have the national defense strategy, which tells us where we're going, and the budget is the tool that gets everything going. So really interesting to see how the autonomous capabilities show up there, and then what we can do there. On a personal note, what's been happening with you in your world, Rob?
For me, I'm really delighted to see that I'm still on paternity leave and seeing my baby girl grow to her 2-month milestone. It's been amazing, to witness that firsthand. So really shout out to all those companies that are offering those best in class benefits packages for those that have those growing families. In addition to that, I'm really scaling my personal brand. So revamping my autonomous platforms of the future newsletter and designing some websites to cover all of my autonomous platforms activities that are ongoing with those consulting and other ventures that I'm going to be embarking on. What about you, Dwayne?
Yeah, as for me, man, it's been a lot of planning this summer and really getting prepped for these fall conferences, and I guess late summer conferences that's coming up. I'm gonna be at the NSB session at PDC in DC. I'll be at the ELC event at the Vineyard, doing some things there, as well as really working through and doing some things you're doing with of planning out the end of the year, looking at some of the future topics that we're going to do on the Storyteller newsletter, as well as looking at what's our next journey in that leadership paradigm that we can get down. So very, very good to get time this time of the year in the summertime as you go and try to refocus and prep for the end of the year. But also really cool to keep doing this podcast we do together, right? So we hope you enjoyed this exploration of the industry from both a technical and business perspective.